Welcome to the DenCast, everybody. In this week's episode, which is number 11, by the way, we've got Sault High Athletic Director and Sault Girls Varsity Basketball Coach Pat Bennin. Pat, thanks for joining us tonight. It's nice to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Excited.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Hey, let's just jump right into it. You mentioned there's a lot of things going on in the life of an athletic director. Why don't you talk about a few of those things?
The life of an athletic director starting out, it basically never ends. It goes 12 months out of the year. You do get a breather in June and July, but once August hits, everything starts coming full circle. There's constant changes all the time. Scheduling is probably the most difficult thing to keep on task because something comes up, there's a game here, there's a game there, a bus needs to be moved. Those types of things, they just jump at you quickly. Right now, the biggest challenge we have probably in the fall for any sport right now is actually soccer referees. We just don't have a lot. So you're at the mercy, like you might have your game scheduled at 5, but they can't get there until 5:30, 6 o'clock. So you got to call the other schools and be like, hey, we got to move this an hour, or we have to move it up an hour. And it's something that's happening statewide right now. There's just not a lot of those out there. And you're going to hear more and more about that. I mean, our officials are aging as we speak. They're older, so that's a difficult piece. The one thing about being an athletic director that I've learned in the last 3 years, just when you think something's completed, it's really not. Something else will come up. It feels like you never get to finish anything, and just when you think you finish something, something else happens.
Yeah, and speaking of the officials, we just had Donnie Gustafson on last week talking about that very issue, the lack of officials, how that's changing game times, how that's changing game days. Is that something that you experience on a regular basis in all the sports?
Constantly. Probably the easiest one. Volleyball's pretty simple. We've got a lot of those refs that are around. Actually, football's improved. Football, when I first took over, everybody's like, get your football officials 2 years in advance. And we do get them in a year in advance now, but there are actually more crews in the Upper Peninsula now, and especially around here that are starting back up. So that has helped out. Basketball, there's always a shortage because everybody's competing for the same pie at the same time in games. I'm still filling ours for this winter. Just throwing messages out to Donnie Gustafson or whoever is available and seeing if they're not. And if they're not, then you've got to go to western end of the UP and see if they're available. And that, is a costly adventure when you start bringing those officials in, but you have to fill your games. So, and then the hardest one's probably, like I said, soccer. I think we have two. I mean, unfortunately, Nick Slager will be back next year, but he got an opportunity to go down and work at the University of Michigan with their medical facility, and you can't blame a guy for doing that, but he was my lead official for soccer. He's not here now, so now we're down to 2 registered soccer officials in Eastern UP. So that makes it difficult. And then the spring, baseball, softball. Anybody wants to do it, you can basically name your price.
Well, that's good to know for anybody looking to make a little cash this spring. Would you say that's the hardest part of the job at this point is finding those officials, or are there other things that are even more challenging?
That's tricky. Transportation over the last couple years has been tough. Obviously, just a work shortage of bus drivers available has made it difficult. So you got to balance out how are we going to get teams certain places. Then you're trying to, are we taking charters? So which charter is cheaper, and then they get the school bus. Those are always challenging. Rescheduling at any moment, like in the winter, it's we lucked out last year. We had a beautiful winter. We didn't have a lot of reschedules. But when snowstorms hit, all of a sudden games get canceled, and now you have to find a date to make it back up. And if it's a conference game, it absolutely has to be made back up. And then you start looking at, well, are officials available? They may not be available because obviously they might already be there. So scheduling is always tricky. Transportation is tricky. That is just something that goes with the territory. That's going to come. You got to be able to think on your feet, move quick. It's a challenge, but it's a fun challenge.
Sure. Okay, so you guys have kind of a big event coming up this weekend. You have the newly created Hall of Fame for Sault High coming up. where the first 10 inductees, is that correct?
There's actually 10 athletes and then 4 distinguished alumni. So we have 14 total people going in.
Okay, so do you know those people's names off the top of your head?
I actually do. I've said them enough the last little bit, and I've thrown out enough information about them. So on the distinguished alumni side, we have Glenn Bailey, we have Tom Farnquist, Dr. Tom Robinson, and then Kathy Bell Forrest. For the athletes, we have Archie Beek-Weston, who is the oldest member going in. He played for Sault High in 1913, I believe. Todd Menard, Whitney Bell, Billy Anderson, Colin McCory, Andy Stabile. We have Alice Dusing, Lisa Moran. Oh boy, oh, please don't forget one. Chris Dunbar. And then who am I missing? Did I say Colin and Andy, the swimmers? Billy and Scott Weaver, the other baseball player. So
okay.
yes, so we have 10 athletes from a wide variety of decades, as far back as 1913, up to Colin being the newest one. You know, he graduated in the 2000s.
Okay, so what brought on the idea that, hey, Sault High should have a Hall of Fame?
I feel like it's something that they've talked about for years. I was actually on a committee a long time ago. I don't know why. I didn't graduate from here. I guess I coached here, so that was maybe, but they brought a big group of people in. It was talked about. It was going to be done. And then it just kind of went, it never came to fruition, not by the fault of anyone. It just never came about. And I kept going to places. If you go to Petoskey, you go to Charlevoix, you go to Alpena, they all have these Hall of Fames available talking about their athletes or their alumni. And it was just something that I thought, hey, let's get this on the road and make it something we can do here. We should. We have 150 years of history of our school. And really, we need to start recognizing the accomplishments of those people.
And so when did this thing really start to get some traction?
About 1 year ago, actually, about this time last year is when the ball started rolling. We started, I kind of made a phone call over to the superintendent, over to Amy, and just said, thinking about doing this, and she jumped in and said, this is a great idea, and it just went from there. And then we just started slowly working through the process on how we were going to do this, how were we going to get nominations, and then they had the distinguished alumni had a separate committee, and the athletic department would have a separate committee, and then we would just take those nominations and try to develop what we were going to get for first class. We honestly didn't know what we were going to get. Like, we didn't know if we'd get 2 nominations, 25 nominations, 500. So the very first thing we did at our meeting, I could speak on our behalf as the athletic committee, was just establish the bylaws, how we're going to go about doing this, how does the voting process work. It was very interesting. I mean, I did a lot of research. Fred Bryan at Cadillac was very helpful as he established one in Newberry. He had Cadillac bylaws. Gary Heist, that used to be the athletic director of Petoskey, sent me information on it. And we just kind of, we didn't try to reinvent anything. We took what they did well and said, okay, let's put it in here. I talked to Bill Crawford and Tony Haller, who are on the UP Hall of Fame committee, about how they handle it. We talked to Lake State about what they did, and just went from there and said, okay, here's what we're going to try to do.
So who was able to submit nominations? I mean, was it open to the public?
It's wide open to the public. Anyone can submit them. We had it online. We had it posted on through social media. Then you can go into the website. There's a link there that you can click on. It will open a nomination form. Now you can do that via an online submission. You can print it off, because some people obviously don't like the online portion. You can print that off, fill it out, and then send it to us. Send it to the athletic office, and we put it into a file. I have a file started on all the nominations, and then we went from there. So it was anybody and anyone could nominate anybody at any time.
Okay, so I'm assuming that you're going to add more every year. Is that going to be the plan? That's the plan.
That is absolutely the plan. The criteria says that we'll never put more than 10 in 1 year.
Okay.
We can put up to 10.
Okay, but there's it doesn't have to be 10. It could be 5 1 year if you don't get a number of nominations.
If we don't feel we had the number or the qualified people to be in, then that's what it's going to be. What we look at, and we have a wide variety of categories. This year, it was focused. We wanted to just put athletes in. We didn't go any other route. We wanted to just put 10 athletes in. We were hoping we'd get enough nominations to get 10 athletes in. We did, and we went from there. There's a coaches category. There's eventually going to be a team category that will go in. There's also a spot for, I don't know how to really word it other than someone that maybe provided more to the community outside, like a booster or, I mean, just if you were a strong, like I think it's in the Major League Baseball, like if you were a sports reporter and you did a lot for Sault High, then maybe that will go in there as a special category. So there's 4 distinct categories. For an athlete, you have to have played at Sault High. You did not have to graduate from Sault High. You just had to have played at Sault High. The reason we looked at a variety of reasons why we wanted to stay away from saying you had to graduate from Sault High. We had people in the 40s that went to war. They didn't graduate. Like went into World War II and they never got a diploma. And
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So you had to look at a lot of that stuff. We have people that are Coast Guard families. Maybe they come in and they, as a senior, what if we have a kid that had a great career for 3 years, but due to the nature of the job, they have to leave for their senior year? Should they be excluded from this opportunity? And so we looked at a lot of different scenarios. It was very interesting to sit down. I have no vote. I'm a non-voting member. I just chair it. I will never reveal who's on the committee. People may tell you they're on it. People may not never tell you they're on it. But we're not going to reveal it. As I said, if anybody questions it, that's why I'm here. Pete Rose is always questioned on why he's not in, and there's always controversy when you do a Hall of Fame, but I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely. Shifting gears a little bit, we know football is in the Big North Conference. Currently, our other sports are independent. Is there a plan moving forward that, volleyball, basketball will be in a conference?
We have submitted letters to the Big North to join in those other sports. I'm hoping we get a positive response. I'm confident we'll get a positive response, but you never know. We've looked at the Great Northern Conference as well, which would be Marquette, Escanaba, Menominee, and Kingsford. Travel-wise, I mean, to go down the freeway is better for us than I think to go down US 2 or M28.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that we are kind of geographically in a bad spot. I mean, it's the fact of the matter. And when Sheboygan got the opportunity, they have a great opportunity. What they got to do, the dominoes fell in their way, so they got to leave and go to the Lake Michigan Conference. That worked out for them. Unfortunately, that leaves us with not enough teams for a conference, according to MHSA regulations. So, we're constantly. I'm constantly thinking. I'm hoping. I'm pretty confident that the Big North will eventually come about. That's ultimately where I think we should be.
Well, yeah, because like you said, the travel is an issue because no matter which direction you're coming from, the Sioux's at the end of the line. Mm-hmm. There's no further east, there's no further north.
We're just, and the size of schools around us, they're not going to let us into something like that. So,
right.
And we have a wide variety of sports. We have soccer, we have a wrestling program, we have different things that we need to find those schools to be able to play. And we play a lot of these schools already. We already play Traverse City. We already play Petoskey. We play Gaylord. So I'm hoping that's the natural fit for us. And, I'm hoping we'll hear some positive news here in the next few weeks.
Okay. So, and not to rain on that parade, but the Sioux was in that conference before at one point, and the other schools decided, yeah, we're not traveling to Sault Ste. Marie, right?
I believe we asked to leave in all reality.
Okay.
Don't quote me on this because I wasn't in this position I am now. I think there was a removal, like we asked, because what happened was, at the time, Lincoln, Alcona, Rogers City, St. Agnes, Newberry, Sheboygan, it was a lot larger. The Straits area was a lot larger conference than what it is currently. Rudyard was in it. So there was about 7 or 8 teams there at the time. Then Lincoln Alcona left, Rogers City left, and things started to fall apart from there.
Sure. Okay, so circling back to the challenges that we talked about earlier, the Sioux just recently went through a fairly challenging process of finding a boys basketball coach, and you've settled on one. How much has that changed from the perspective of, it used to be people were lining up for those jobs. You were sorting through resumes by the dozen, and now you're getting a couple for jobs like that, what's the difference, in your opinion, as to why so few people want to coach anymore?
I think it's something when I talk to athletic directors around. It's not just universal to hear. It's a lot of places, and honestly, I think it's something you're seeing a lot in this type of job. You're on the firing line. Like they're going to be critical of you a lot, and are you willing to take that? I mean, you got to have you're going to grow thick skin in a quick hurry being a head coach of any sport, and I think it's just polarized more now. Keyboard courage is out there. I mean, it's real easy to type something out and go on different avenues to maybe make your complaints instead of actually talking to that individual. And I think 30 years ago, if there was an issue, it was handled with that person face to face, and that makes it a lot more difficult for someone to just come unglued. And it also gives the other person the opportunity to explain what's going on, because a lot of times you don't get to do your explaining. You're guilty before it ever gets to your opportunity to talk. I think you see this in all sports right now, in all avenues. I mean, a coach is wrong before they ever get a chance to explain, because it's already out in public opinion, or it's already on Twitter or X or whatever it is now. It's out there, and unfortunately they don't get the chance. They're guilty before it ever gets to the point of, hey, this is what happened, this is why I'm doing this.
Well, I think keyboard courage is a great phrase to use, because I think that I know when I was in high school and I played, if I had a complaint about the coach, my mother or dad would tell me, they're the coach, you do what they say. It wasn't, oh, my boy's being mistreated, oh, my daughter's not getting a fair shake. It always started with the athlete figuring it out, as opposed to the coach just being wrong, like you talked about.
Yeah, and I think that's changed the way we have to coach. I mean, I think 20 years ago when I was doing this, if you were asked, why are we doing this? Because I said so. I mean, that was the honest answer. Well, this is why we're doing this, because I said so. And I think we've evolved a little bit in terms of, with the amount of technology out there and the amount of opportunity for the kids to watch video and see other things going on. So if you're lining up a certain way, they want to know why. Well, then you have to explain that why. You don't just say, well, this, because I decided. I find myself saying, we're doing this because, just so I alleviate that question 10 minutes from now. Well, there's a rhyme to what we're doing. Just give us some time and explain it to them. You got to explain a little bit more. And I had the opportunity to go down to B Camp probably 3 or 4 years ago, and the coach from Hope was the one that said that. He's like, we have to tell the why more than we've ever had to our athletes, and that's at a college level. Because they know, they're more knowledgeable than what we realize now, because at their fingertips, they can, if you're playing against a 1-3-1 zone, they can Google something and say, well, this is how we should break it, because look, here it works on this. So you have to explain why you're doing something.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I know I can tell you from the time I was in the 6th grade all the way to the time I graduated, every single coach I had, regardless of sport, probably would have been fired coaching in today's world, I guess. Just from the things coaches were allowed to say, coaches were allowed to do. Nowadays you can't just say that first automatic response that comes to your head. You have to make sure you have the filters on, and you have to be politically.
You have to be calculated of what you say. I still believe you can be disciplined, you can still have your hard line rules, and still be able to get what you want across. I tell any new coach or any coach, and this is from 20 years of coaching, but I don't care. And if you talk to any coach anymore, there's only a few things you can control on a court or on a field or wherever. That's effort and discipline. Can I make the ball go in the hoop? I can't. I mean, I can't. There's nights we get great shots. They don't go in. That's life. I mean, but can you hustle? Can you dive on the floor? Can you play with effort? Can you have discipline on the floor? Those are things a coach can control anymore. And always could. Is there different ways you got to do it now? Yeah, there are. You have to be a little bit smarter with how you handle things. But, I've always said the bench is still a great equalizer. if you don't like what's going on, come sit next to me and we'll just figure it out from over here for a little bit.
We'll talk about it for a while.
But it's not yelling and screaming. I mean, I have adapted in 20 years. I was and I still am energetic, I guess is the best word, on the sideline, but I don't yell like I used to.
Okay, so like we talked about, you're in addition to being the athletic director, you also coach the Varsity Girls Basketball team. Well, now some of the things we've been talking about as far as coaching, how challenging is that for you to do both? It's
challenging. I got a great administrative staff that helps me out. I mean, I think we all knew coming in, that was one of the things that I said. I wanted to continue to coach. I haven't lost that passion, and when I lose that passion, I'll be done. But I still love to do it. And Janine Sherman and Scott Menard and now Kelly Greener, they're great. I mean, they know, like, hey, I'm going to be gone at 1 o'clock. Okay, we got you. We'll figure it out. We'll handle things. Game management wise, I have a great staff that's there. If I can't be there, Scott can be there and cover the game for me. Very rarely, I've done a pretty good job of scheduling where only on occasion am I somewhere and my boys' team is home or I have a home event. I have a huge luxury too in that hockey is total, I mean, they're an independent, but they're not independent. I mean, they're still under my jurisdiction, but they hire all their refs.
Okay, now that's something else I wanted to ask you about. And I forgot to mention one of our rules is that we do not compliment Scott Menard on this show, not ever, until he renounces his Packer fandom.
Oh, well.
Until that day, he's
Sorry.
there. But
I guess I broke rule one.
Yeah, well, I didn't mention
I'm a Lions fan.
So that's my fault.
Okay.
That's my fault. I should have mentioned that. The second thing, I wanted to talk about hockey a little bit because it is sort of a separate entity. How does that jive with, I mean, I assume they have to follow all the athletic code of Sault High, but they are sort of on an island a little bit.
They're on an island, but I mean, I got to give, Rick does a great job of constantly communicating with me on what's going on. I mean, they do all the scheduling, they handle their referees, they do all their transportation. I mean, that is a huge burden off of our department.
Right.
They did it, 12 to 14 years ago to help the finances of sports. It's expensive to run a hockey program. They said they would take it on. It allowed us to keep some other sports around. So, my hat's off to them, how hard they work at getting it going. That being said, they still have the MHSA guidelines, so they have to fall under our hat. We still handle academics. We still handle any discipline. And we still have the coaches under salary come out of our area so that we have control of that. But after that, I mean, they kind of run what they're going to do. I mean, I go to their tryouts. I'm at almost every game. They even gave me a coffee mug. I even got a little spot in the locker room. It's kind of nice. So, I mean, I do go to those things. I constantly check on them because they are a part of our program. They're just doing it independently and help funding it. And a lot of I didn't know Escanaba baseball was like that. I had no idea until I talked to their coach down at the districts this year, and that's how they run things. So it's not unusual. And it works out great.
Do you see that kind of thing happening more in the future, or is it just sort of those two?
I think it's some new sports that maybe come about might have to start by that, and then we can figure out how to get to that point. I don't see any of the other sports going that route. Hockey's just very unique. I mean, ice rental, it's not cheap, and it's and it's easier for them. They know what they're doing. I mean, they're experts in this field. And so they know how to handle it. They know how to make the deals. So it just makes that part of it way easier. But that's a unique situation. I was shocked to hear baseball in Escanaba was like that, but that's how they run it. We've tried to stay away from separate booster clubs, and you still have your own fundraisers and things, and you have accounts to handle that, but we're trying to funnel a lot towards the booster club, who has done a tremendous job here in the last couple of years.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to talk about was you guys recently entered a T-Mobile contest, giveaway, I don't even know what you want to call it, but as it turns out, success.
It was a success. It was kind of surprising. So about 2 weeks ago, I got an email from Senator DeMoose's office saying there's this T-Mobile Friday Night Lights $5,000 weekly challenge with a chance to win, $5.5 million. We see them all the time. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see what it is. I mean, what's it hurt?
Right.
It's all social media promotion. So we have two ambassadors, Addison Talsma and Ella Rutledge, are our student section ambassadors. They run our Instagram accounts and they do all that stuff. I oversee it, so there's nothing inappropriate on there.
Sure.
I keep an eye on it all the time, and they'll run by. But I'm like, hey, this is it. So you just had to tag whatever you did under Friday night 5G lights. So we did this, and we didn't know what to expect, but we got, and I looked, and like we had over 5,000 views on a couple things we did, and I'm like, oh, we're doing okay. So just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. And then last Friday we got an email saying we won. We're one of the select, 32 in the nation that got the $5,000, which is $5,000 check towards our athletic program. And now we're into the rounds where if we can make it through the next round, it's kind of, I think, similar. You remember when Kraft was doing it for like the ice rinks and Puller
Yes.
ended up.
Yep.
So it's kind of the same theory now. So now we're trying to get to that level. If we can get into the final 16, the lowest we could get is 250,000 up to 5.5 million. We had to submit pictures of our field house. It was all geared towards renovating what you have. And in all reality, what we have right now is fairly old. So it was an opportunity. I'm like, well, I'll send some of these pictures. I mean, I have lights at our football field that aren't working because I've got a bird's nest up there and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about that too. So an osprey, right? Is that what?
That is what it is.
So this osprey just decides he's going to nest up in one of the light posts, and all of a sudden that light post is no longer part of Sault High.
Well, what ended up happening, the lights don't. So somehow that bird's nest has tangled up our wires because the lights won't turn on. It's not that I can't turn on the lights; they just won't work. Well, we need to be able to go up there. We have to remove the nest. Well, unfortunately, it's a protected species, so that turns into a whole other issue. So we have to wait for the birds to leave. I've done a lot of osprey information. I do know that the mother leaves a month ahead of time and goes south, and the father and the kids wait, and then they'll eventually leave. Now, that may be November, that may be December, but eventually they're going to leave, and at which point we hopefully can get up there, take the nest out of there, and allow them to go somewhere else. We have to figure out how we're going to handle all that, but that is why right now, and I got to give a shout out to Norris Contracting and Walsh Enterprises. They quickly stepped up, said, yeah, we have portable lights, use them, get them ready. I've become an expert on those. I'm not very mechanical, but I'm learning to be very mechanical on how to start lights and diesel fuel and priming engines and everything else, but we're getting the field lit. So, and it's hats off to people like that. Without them, we don't get it done.
Sure. Just one more hat for you to wear as the Sault High Athletic Director. That's funny. So if you were to get the 5.5 million or even the 250,000, what would be, like, if you were making a list, what's at the top of the list?
It's a great question. I mean, I look at it, I would love to get our track done. I would like to fix that. That obviously needs some repairs. Field turf was on the list. Bleachers, and then you just start going down the list. Like, we don't have handicap accessible bathrooms right now. We're grandfathered in. We're lucky. Our field house probably, and hasn't been touched since 1990. Like, I mean, paint, sure, but like.
Right.
I can't describe it to you. You'd almost have to walk in there to really believe.
Well, I've been in there. Yeah.
So, I mean, it needs a lot of renovating as well. The whole complex does, and hopefully, maybe cross our fingers this works out and it happens. At which point, I would be ecstatic and be able to do a lot of things. But there's a lot of wish lists out there. I don't even know. Like, I would ideally like to have a better entrance, better parking lot, the whole 9 yards. I mean, we would really like to. And I've spent some time with the crew that did it, and I think 1990, the Project Pride, Brian Stanaway, Bob Arfstrom.
Right.
I talked to them about that, and it's time that the next generation steps up, because it's an area that can be improved upon, and it's something that the community can honestly use. I mean, a nice track to walk on, those type of things that could be available to you. Different fields and things. If you field turf it, think about you can have soccer there, you can have lacrosse there, you can have football there, you can have so many more things go on without worrying about the wear and tear or cutting the grass and that type of stuff.
Well, yeah, I've seen a couple of those fields that have done that. Claire, where my wife is from, has that kind of field, and it's phenomenal. Like, it's unbelievable. Petoskey's new football field is that stuff, and it's.
Yeah, I mean, those are state-of-the-art facilities, and they got great. And I mean, I never tell, like, they'll say they're maintenance-free. They're never maintenance-free. Nothing is maintenance-free. That's like, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Right.
Somebody's paying for it. But, I mean, there are upkeeps you have to do. I had the guy actually here this summer to look at it, tell me what we have. I have field turf in the back of my car right now just to see what it looks like. But he was honest, and he's like, up here, you guys, we say you'll get 10 years out of it before you have to start doing some repairs. You probably up here will get 12 to 15 because the one thing that really hurts it is sun. And he said 6 months of the year, yours is probably covered with snow, so the sun never hits it.
Yeah, it's insulated very well for most of the year. That's probably true. Okay, so just circling back to the T-Mobile thing real quick. What can the public do to help you guys get any additional funding out of that?
Basically, we just need promotion. Anything that's you see, middle school football, soccer, cross country, football, whatever it is. And if you go on to the Sault Public Schools Facebook page, you'll scroll down, you'll see the 5G light, and they tell you what to hashtag it to. You just like when you take a picture and post it, you're going to hashtag Friday night 5GL or in sweepstakes, and that's what gets it out there. And the more we get it out there that Sault Schools is doing this, the better opportunity we have to cash out and win.
All right, well, good luck, because that would be a huge, huge bonus.
You're not kidding, it would be. I wouldn't have to worry about off-spray anymore.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in again. We really appreciate all your support. Again, as always, please like and share. We're still trying to get as many eyes and ears on this as possible. Also, still trying to get that big sponsor for the podcast. So if you're out there and you're interested in being a part of what we're doing here, we're always open to suggestions. So as always, thank you for listening. We appreciate you guys and everything you do for us. You guys are what keep us going. So please continue to read our stuff, listen to our stuff, like it, share it. Again, thank you, and we will get back with you guys soon.